For example, the Chiang Mai initiative. At a practical level, they can agree to practical measures like paid in capital. Okay, so instead of it being a promise, it's actual money in the bank. Uh, at the philosophical level, there has to be an honest broker in the region to promote collective action. And of course, what will come to mind immediately is ASEAN centrality. But I remember Ambassador Keshavapani says that they only say that because ASEAN is weak, right? Once ASEAN becomes, let's say, a key player, they'll stop talking about ASEAN centrality, right? So we have to look for an honest broker. That's easier said than done. Maybe the Asian Development Bank. We, we, we can look at that, but it's very difficult. But so basically, how to promote collective action, it's easier said than done. That's my answer. Thank you.
Yours, Rizal.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for the giving me a chance to talk about the my recommendations. Actually, some of them have been discussed by Dr. Vo on how the regional initiatives, such as in ASEAN's, already tackle those issues of sustainable developments. But I'd like also to add another dimensions, which is prioritizing the goals. There is no doubt that the 17 goals are all important, but I guess there are some that are more relevant to the regions or to the countries and economies in these regions. And then we should also work this out on the one that give a greater multiplier effect. And this is one thing that we need to do. Another things on the more practical element, actually on the Dr. Vo also already mentions about connectivity, on how connectivity can improve the sustainability of the economic developments. Maybe we should also put another elements on this connectivity, which is a green financing, or taking into account sustainable standards into infrastructure developments. We know that infrastructure development is still in a big in needs for these regions, and we also see there are many regional initiatives on the infrastructure developments. But we should also put green financings, sustainable standards on those infrastructure developments. I think that's my take on this issue. Um, but I also like to comment on the services sectors. I think so it's quite interesting to look at, and I agree with Professor Urata that we need to look at which services sectors. But I also want to look at perhaps perhaps the futures of a future opportunity in reducing inequality is also in services sector. Yeah. Because as I mentioned before in the last sessions, the technology is getting easier now. Now everybody can use their mobile phones to be connected to the world, to the internet, and to do productive activities. Unlike 20 years ago, when you need to have skills in computer, skills in programming to give your services. But now everybody can do it, including also those people in rural areas, those people with less educations, so that perhaps services that can be done, that can be conducted through this kind of technology, would also open up the opportunities for them, for those currently left behind, and then also, of course, reduce the inequality in the future. Of course, this is still a very early hypothesis, but I think as Professor Chang mentions about the Chinese case, and also there are many other cases in Indonesia, for example, in my countries where non-farm jobs in rural area actually increase by by adopting the digital technology and digital economy by those people living in the rural area. It creates opportunities for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. S. A big hand to my panel here. We would quickly move towards the panel, the last session to close the day-long workshop. Thank you. To have the President here with us, and we would be discussing the key points which emerged in today's discussion. As you would agree, Asia Pacific Forum 2018 could capture some of the nuances of our development experience and some of the points that I could quickly note down for this summary. I think would just be a sort of glimpse. It is not possible, humanly impossible to capture all the details that we discussed in last so many hours. The morning started with the extremely rich inaugural session in which the former Secretary East, Ambassador Preeti Saran, raised some very important issues, not only about the global architecture, about the very idea of disruption which is coming in, and her expression that disruption now is emerging as a positive term, the idea that globalization and its process are posing the challenges that we are facing, particularly in the backdrop of how the issues are on the table in terms of the unfulfilled sort of promises from the Doha round of development experience, and from the ideas of how we look into the institutions and the partnerships that are of key significance. She also alluded to the process of how some of the countries have achieved success, and she alluded to ASEAN's experience, particularly of the CLMV countries, on how they have now premised, and we heard Vietnam's excellent presentation on how the poverty has been reduced to only 3 to 4% people. So this, I think, at the end of the day gets completely mesmerized in terms of how the processes are unfolding. Ambassador Amar Sinha also raised issues which later he reflected in terms of primacy of other sectors, other than services sector, which many economists later also alluded to, and we heard Joseph mentioning about how services in many other areas may also be leveraged to reduce inequality. Kazumasa Kusakasan, Honorable President, also referred to the issues of globalization, its process and challenges. With America's leadership in hospital, things are getting settled with the new reality as it is emerging, and he mentioned about the comprehensive TPP that everybody is talking about. With new technologies, Industrial Revolution 4 requires more robust response, what new technologies may bring in, and this is, I think, is absolutely important. You also referred to the role of the private firms, which later Professor Urata asked in terms of should governments come forward in terms of promoting modernization and also digitization. Point number 5 is in terms of datafication and digitization that again Professor Urata raised, and then the issues related to privacy and e-government that were also referred to. Professor Zhang Jianping raised the issue of complementarities and the complementarities with China and the new efforts that are required to see how China can bring in the balance in the emerging trends that we are talking. Time and again we referred to, and in the session and after that, services became a sort of key point of discussion. Many presentations were around that because the session was it, but even later we heard discussions and references to services. We also heard that they have emerged as an important area for detailed analysis and providing new traction for future economic growth, and with goods getting problem, services may provide new traction to the growth of ASEAN region. We had excellent presentation by Anita San and Dr. Prabir Dey enumerating how services sector are going to be more and more important in terms of how we are going to go forward. We had excellent presentation by Dr. Yos for discussing when he mentioned that services may even help us reduce inequality, which I think is very important point that you raised. Professor Chong Yang Han, I think, raised this important issue of how services have given greater traction to the process of liberalization, and the fact that you emphasized on RCEP be concluded at the earliest also, I think, is important from the point of view of how we go forward. At the theoretical level, I found Professor Simon Tay's presentation interesting, and the issue that you raised in terms of the growth, technology and people, how the three are interlinked. You did refer to flying geese theory, which I found quite interesting, but I think that was important. Dr. Chen's issue in terms of sort of labor as an important dimension in terms of manufacturing, and also role of World Bank and OECD with 3 C's that you referred to, I think is important. You mentioned about competitiveness, capability and connectivity. So these 3 C's that you mentioned are important. Ambassador Macklin's point I found very interesting in terms of nature of regional integration that you referred to, and how we can bring in that dynamics to the wider part of Asia is interesting. Middle income trap for countries in the region was also referred to. The session that I chaired on SDGs, I think I found extremely impressive. It could go all across, picking up cross-cutting issues. East Asia has been growing quite well, was one of the points that Dr. Yos raised, and how inequalities have multiplied. Largely, you listed inequalities of opportunities, inequality of not getting access to education, and also access to decent jobs. And then Shaukat supplemented that by raising this issue, whether it is because of the structural change economies are going through, and his write-up in Spotlight did mention about those structural changes. It may be because of the services sector that we are getting in, but then Dr. Yos Rizal, you also raised the issue that services sector may be a source of reducing inequality because of larger sort of equalizer in the society. The focus was also on how micro sector can be leveraged for economic growth. Vietnam's experience and their ability to bring down poverty to 3 to 4% level is a point that Dr. Tri Tan Vo raised, and I think that's an extremely important issue that has come on the table. ASEAN integration is not just about connectivity, but it is also and trade, but it is also about connectivity, community, and cooperation. These were the 3 C's that he mentioned, and I think again this is important from the point of view of what lessons other regions can take, particularly as I refer to South Asia. Sources of vulnerabilities was another important point, and global financial safety nets, I think, is important. The fact that India has connected with ASEAN's fintech when our Prime Minister was in Singapore last week, I think is an important achievement in terms of what strategy we should have. I would close by saying that what form of regional cooperation these kind of challenges would encourage us to take is something that we need to answer, and some of that was responded to by my panel here, Dr. Joseph and also Dr. Yos, both responded to, and Shaukat also emphasized in terms of skills and identifying appropriate skills, investing in education, and then of course fintech and financial inclusion were also emphasized. These were some of the points that I could capture in day-long notes. I might have missed out somebody or some important point. My apologies for that. But these were the points, President, I thought were there. Thank you.
Thank you, Co-Chair. From me, words of appreciation. I enjoyed all of the 3 sessions. First, excellent contributions by members of our Asia Pacific Forum as panelists. At the same time, the questions and discussions by floor certainly deepened our understandings. And I think that knowledge is important, but I value more interpretations